The official call is under review. Let's go to the monitor.
SEC football. It just means more. Now back to your favorite bearded duo, Todd and Marty.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the recap show of Week 15. It's been Rival Week. What a crazy week. Before we get started, y'all know Todd's working on some family stuff, doing some Christmas parties and whatnot. But I am going to bring in our special guest for this week. Been on here before. So let's give a good shout out and a round of applause for Mr. Cody Mealer. Where's my clapping hands? Oh, I can't find my clapping hands. No, not there. See? There it is. Oh, man. I'll get this button thing figured out. Yeah, hopefully they're working. If not, I can fix it in post. Guys, before we get jumped into this, we're going to get our sponsor shout out in real quick, and then we'll get down to business.
This episode of the Under Review podcast is brought to you by Chuck's Heating and Air. Chuck has over 40 years of service and experience with residential services. He services most makes and models. He is Alabama licensed, bonded, and insured, and locally owned and operated. Are you hot and you're supposed to be cool? Are you cool and you're supposed to be hot? Then you've got a problem. Call Chuck. Area code 256-892-2757. Again, 256-892-2757. Chuck's Heating and Air.
Thanks again to Chuck's Heating and Air for all the support we get from him and everything he does. So, Cody, let's kind of jump into it. First thing we will do on Lookout, the new Top 25 come out. And I just got a chance to look at it when you got here. Brittany had told me a few spots about it. How was this Top 25 poll going to shake up for the games we have in conference play for the playoff? What are you thinking there?
So what I'm looking at here is when you go into the playoff, especially going into this first round here, you're going to have a few things happen for a few of these spots to be sealed. As you see, Alabama went from number 13 up to number 11. Somehow in this last week snuck back into the playoff. But SMU faces off with Clemson. Clemson is coming off of a tough loss against an SEC opponent, South Carolina. What's going to happen here? SMU has to defeat Clemson to keep them out of that playoff spot. Boise, I'm going to have to say, is going to have to beat UNLV.
I think so, too. And I like Boise. I think G&T, the Heisman candidate, I don't think he can outdo what Travis Hunter's doing, playing Ironman ball on both sides, but I think he gives them a lot to take down UNLV in that conference title game. But I want to flip back to the SMU-Clemson game. I really think Clemson's running game is spectacular. They've really outdone themselves. Coming back from the death penalties they got back in the late 70s, early 80s, whatever it was. Clemson did struggle. I thought South Carolina punched them in the mouth with their defensive play. I thought Kublick was going to play better, which was our interstate game of the week. So we'll jump more into that when we get to it. But for mostly our fans around here, it's a little shocking to see Alabama back in with another rivalry game that they did win. I don't think it's possible without a little more magic happening for them to get into the playoffs. I mean, there's so many conference games right here going into it. The Texas-Georgia, I think, is one of the biggest. The Ohio State-Oregon game. So really going to play out a lot at the end of next week once we break through that to see where that first playoff ranking is going to be and where I say our SEC teams are going to be as far as Texas, Georgia, and Alabama.
Which, like I told you before the show, Marty, I had, at the beginning of the season, I had 5 SEC teams sitting in the playoff at the end of season play. Right now, we're sitting at 4, if I'm looking at this correctly. So it depends on how your conference championships go to see if that plays out. But right now, we're sitting at 4 SEC teams, which is pretty spectacular for our conference.
Well, most definitely. And then I think South Carolina outside looking in, and I don't think Bama maybe has done enough to be in that, especially with some of these teams losing late here in the season as Miami did and Clemson here. But as far as that goes, it's going to be interesting. A little bit more magic for the Alabama fans around here. Going to have some things happen, and for other teams to lose to get in there. But with that woo magic they got in Tuscaloosa, it's very possible.
Well, I'm going to tell you this, Marty. I am a diehard Alabama fan.
We know.
Y'all know that. But I want to say, if they slip South Carolina in this playoff, I would not be surprised if a little bit of this magic went off. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they've done enough this season. But let me tell you something. South Carolina in 2025 is going to be a team to watch out for.
Oh, most
they
definitely.
are on the road and on the move for something great down there.
I think Shane Beamer has done an excellent job with them. So I think they are losing a few spots defensively, but I think they're going to be okay. Really, really good thing that Beamer's got going on. So we've talked a few minutes about this. So let's jump into what we all came for. Back to rivalry, the craziest week. And I do want to touch on a few things. Is how I noticed more this year, and like Brittany and I and the dad, we talked about it after even some today, is the craziness after the games that's happened. All the fights and going on. I think there was teams that had been pepper sprayed, the NC State game. A lot of craziness planting the flag. I think it's silly. Yes, it's a rivalry game and stuff like that can happen, but it seems a whole lot more in this culture, and I don't like it. Even with the Alabama game, yes, there was some problems with Lambert Smith and another player for Alabama, Malachi Moore, seems to be around a lot of this stuff, and I think that hurts his draft stock going in for the Senior Bowl and all that. But that's, I think that's where they don't have any more restrictions as we say, the Saban years, that they get to play around. I don't like it for college football. Yes, I do love the rivalry. I love the heart, the fire, and everything that comes with it. But when you're having to be pepper sprayed and breaking up fights, people with crutches chasing you around, and innocent people getting hurt and stuff like that, I think it's silly and it's no place for football.
Well, I go back to, I blame the coaches on not having control over your players and their tempers. Back when I was a player, just in high school, never played college, but in high school, if our tempers flared like that, we were on the field running on Monday. So I feel like there's not enough discipline there with the coaches and the players going in. I think it's become more of an NIL approach. And
I think so, yeah.
And you're looking at how much money you can pay a player, and you're giving them pretty much NFL abilities.
And I've said this tons of times before, that some of these players are going to have to take a pay cut to go to the NFL. As I think Milroe's around $4 million, Ewers is around $8 million, and stuff like that, which is crazy for a 17, 18-year-old kid to have. But nonetheless, I do think you are right as far as like where the culture is now, and again, I get it. It's passionate. Like I said, I got passionate even doing the pre-show talking about all around by me. It fired me up, but it didn't make me want to get a felony or anything like that. All right, so let's jump into our first game. I think that's our first slide, was Louisville at Kentucky, 41-14. The Cardinals really went in and did what we thought they were going to do. One thing I didn't know, that Vandergriff, I don't guess he was hurt, but as far as stat-wise, he didn't have any stats, so the only stats come for Kentucky was really in the second half, where the backup quarterbacks Winslet and Bowley threw for 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And I think this was only in the second half. But Louisville did everything right. 358 rushing yards on 4 touchdowns. And there was, I think they maybe had a defensive touchdown. So they really did what we thought they were going to do. And they take the Governor's Cup in this instant here in Kentucky.
Yeah, I didn't get much time to watch this game, of course, to see much. And I haven't really looked up much on the Louisville-Kentucky game. But I knew Vandergriff was probably a questionable call if he was going to play.
It's always questionable when he's...
Which is kind of surprising to me, because earlier in the season when he played, he played solid game against Georgia.
Yeah, he had a decent game against Ole Miss. If not mistaken, no, they didn't lose that game.
And you look at it, I mean, that's pretty much the best choice Kentucky had for the season.
Yeah, because he really struggled, and I don't know what his status is, if it's his senior, junior, whatever. Me and Todd talks about it 3 or 4 times, but this was, even the last 2 or 3 games, this was the biggest concern for this Kentucky team. Being at the bottom of the SEC and really trying to find their way for next year. And I think Vandergriff, unless he gets better or transfers, he's going to have some real serious issues in the future for him.
I think you're right, Marty. I think this is going to become a situation where, and I honestly think, if I heard correctly, he may have one more year of eligibility, and I think he needs to transfer out. It may be going to a little bit lower school to get some
different program, different scheme, maybe that can help him
just to get some stats. You may not draft high, but at least it'll get you a draft. I mean, go back to look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady's one of the greatest quarterbacks that came out of the league.
Well, I can't stand Michigan or the Patriots.
But, he was one of the last quarterbacks drafted, and he came out with, 7 Super Bowl championships?
Yeah, he's got a... Yeah, you can't... And I think a lot, too, player development. Maybe, like you said, he finds a different scheme, a different coach. And he could have been hurt. I'm not sure, but he really struggled through the years. I don't know if it made Kentucky season any worse or any better, being the... I think they were the last team in the SEC because I think Mississippi State held that one up. But at the end of the day, 7-4 Louisville took care of 4-7 Kentucky, 41-14.
This one right here was one of my favorite matchups.
Yeah, this was as I talked about in the pre-show. This game was gonna be close. I thought it might have been. I think it didn't get really escalated till the end where Tennessee really pulled away. That we knew that Pavia really had his hands full. But one of my things is would he have some help? And he did. The running core played good. He did have a touchdown, but I think at the end of the day, that number 11, 9-2 Tennessee team was way too much in the end. It really showed late in the ball game. But Pavia, man, he did really well at the things he knew. And I just think, I guess the talent-wise for Texas and Vandy just kind of outweighed at the end of the game. But Vandy never gave up. I like where they're going. So I'm okay with this, but this is about what I thought for this game coming in for Tennessee.
And I agree. With it being a rivalry game, you see a little bit different score than what you saw with Texas and Vanderbilt a little bit earlier in the season, which was, very close game for Texas too. That was a nail biter.
Scare, yeah.
But I will say this, you got Tennessee sitting at they're like number 7 or 8 right now. No, 6. They're number 6. They're number 6 right now. They moved up a pretty good bit with this.
Definitely going to be in the playoff.
Their playoff team this year. Josh Heupel has done an excellent job down there, and so I think that what you're about to see is it's not going to be all about Alabama and Georgia anymore.
Yeah, I think Tennessee coming. Nico being a freshman really played stellar. He, we've seen him progress over the years. Like some of the games early in the year, he had bonehead moves and mistakes, but I think he really progressed. Now, like I said, this is a 6-5 bowl team in Vandy, which we wouldn't have thought at the beginning of the year. So he didn't struggle as much as we thought he would. Nico, man, 257 yards, 4 touchdowns, really cemented that they need to be in the playoff. And Sampson, didn't score any touchdowns, but 14, 15 carries, 178 yards, really was going to be their bread and butter for this game to win. And it really showed in the stats and on the scoreboard with 36 points. So.
And I think Pavia's got another year or 2 of eligibility as well, going back to Vanderbilt. If he's not a senior this year, Vanderbilt could be dangerous again next year.
And I think if he's not, and I think he will come back. I think this was pretty much the year of Pavia, but I think he can excel his game next year. I think Vandy can do a little bit better on recruiting with what Clark League's got going on there. So. Wouldn't be a surprise. Like I said, I hate me not knowing. That's that good hooked on phonics. Me not knowing that he's a senior or whatnot, but if he does have a chance, I think he'll come back and Vandy can maybe make the playoffs next year. Just see with this whole transfer portal and all that. So let's jump into our next game. Really was, what time was this? Oh, I missed it. But this was a really, really close game. The battle line war. This is a in-state rivalry that really the battle between like state lines and stuff like this. Is Arkansas travels down to Mizzou. I think Mizzou's ranked 23rd or.
Let's see. They are ranked 22nd.
Okay, so I believe at this time they were ranked 22nd or 23rd. Where's my RSU played? I got a whole bunch, but the weather for this game was horrible. We flipped over, Brittany and I watched it, and man, there was snow everywhere. I didn't think it was already time for snow in these parts of the woods, but man, snow covered the field, and I just told Brittany I'd be miserable of even getting there. But as far the game was super close, there was a couple questionable calls down late, I believe, and I think this was one of the games that ended up with a scuffle at the end. But if you look at some of the numbers, Arkansas did everything right. Taylor Green had 229 rushing yards. Jaquindon Jackson, 87 yards with 3 touchdowns. Really a game where they should have won this game, but got outplayed by, I think it was a last minute drive where Mizzou was able to score. But man, just, Brady Cook for the Tigers. He only had 30 yards, 1 touchdown. Marcus Green, their running back, 90 yards on 2 touchdowns. So I really don't see how they lost this because I think Arkansas led in almost all the categories. Their conversion rate was really well. But still, in these rivalry games, the last second matters. So
we've seen that before.
Yeah.
It's funny how you bring that up.
Yeah, well, it happens.
No, and we actually discussed this earlier this week, where it wasn't Missouri and Arkansas, but there was another game that we discussed. I think it was forgot who it was. It's like Illinois or something like that, where you were going to have snow in the game that was predicted, and we discussed. Drank.
Yeah. Got parched and got long-winded.
Well, and we discussed snow was going to be a factor. It was going to depend on if they were ready to play in that colder weather and if they were going to be ready to play if there was snow on the ground. With this one, you had snow on the ground that we didn't even know was supposed to happen.
I didn't.
And so here you are. Conditions change, and Arkansas they did everything right.
They did. They really did.
But were they prepared as Missouri? Were they as prepared as Missouri?
There you go. Fine St. Clair County schooling.
Yeah, I'm telling you, my English is terrible.
But anyway, like I said, I think Missouri has a 2-game lead now in this series. But they take the win, 28-21. All right. Our next game, the 6-5 Oklahoma Sooners traveled to another night game in Death Valley, holding up the 7-4 record. At the beginning of this game, as the way LSU has played super spotty, Oklahoma has played super spotty. Oklahoma coming off I think their biggest win of the season, beating Alabama, really thrashed Alabama. Alabama didn't score any touchdowns, 1 field goal. And then on the other hand, LSU had come off that week before after Alabama slashed them. Jalen Milroe scores 4 touchdowns, has almost 300 yards rushing. But I was kind of shocked, Cody. I thought this game would be a little bit closer, but Oklahoma had no wiggle room in this as Nussmeier really, finally, one of his games that he was on, he really played well.
Well, I'm gonna say I actually kind of figured this game would go this way, Marty, and it's nothing against like what you're saying, because you're exactly right. Oklahoma comes off a big win against Alabama. LSU comes off a big loss a couple weeks ago against Alabama. Well, here's the thing. LSU was hungry.
Yeah.
LSU was hungry. Brian Kelly has not been able to get that last minute win.
Right, that he struggled for all year. Especially early in the season.
I mean, he's been so close several times. And he's said in every single interview that I've seen, we've got to do things better as coaches. We've got to prepare these players.
And it starts there. That's where it starts.
And I believe that's where it starts. to be honest with you, in this game, looking at the score, looking at the stats, I believe Brian Kelly did what he's been telling the media he was going to do.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was doing it all season. We just didn't see it until this game.
And it kind of stinks because LSU, I thought, would have been a playoff contender for the SEC this year. The 4 losses are pretty big. They lost the game early against Notre Dame, then the Alabama game, and they had other struggle games. But this game, Nussmeier really put it together and done everything for LSU. And then their defense really come. Whit Weeks was another star. I think next year his brother is coming to the team, and I think there's going to be 3 of them brothers. It's going to be an amazing defensive back. But Nussmeier, 22 for 31, 277 yards, 3 touchdowns, really, really made his presence felt throwing the ball. But on the other hand, Jackson Arnold did everything that he could do as far as 14 for 21, 110 yards. Also had 17 carries with 75 yards. But really the in between that, LSU's defense really come to play and really put Arnold in his place as far as him running the ball as well as he did against Alabama and stuff like that. I mean, still 100, almost 200 yards offense just from one person is a lot. But LSU's defense stuck in there, really just choked the life out of Oklahoma late. But with 6 wins, they're bowl eligible, which is, I don't say I had them picked for bowls this year, but it's kind of shocking to me. Oh, get a swig.
This game here, Marty, is no surprise.
No
surprise.
No surprise. This is the Sunshine Showdown at FSU. And Cody, I think this is the only time Florida has been favored in the game this year, unless it was against one of them small high school teams that they played. Nothing new. Florida looked like a national championship team back when Tebow and Spurrier and all them guys were down there as far as how they played. Crazy amount of turnovers in this game. FSU had 8 fumbles, and I think, 8 turnovers altogether. Really, you have more than 3 turnovers, you're not projected to win the game anyway. But 8 fumbles. Florida's defense, 8 sacks, 14 tackles for losses, and man, the great play from DJ Lagway really cemented this game as Florida found some late magic, like I've talked about 2 or 3 last shows ago. They found some magic, and maybe Napier stays, but they are in a bowl game, which is, we had no intention of that at the beginning of the year.
I agree. I honestly thought Florida would have lost more games than what they have, and it's sitting at 5 right now. But what I will say is, I read a thing, and I don't know how true it is, that says Billy Napier will be there next year.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, I think if that's the case, he's got to go to the transfer portal.
Yeah, he's going to need more help.
But let's flip that to the FSU side. FSU, I will give them this. They lost a ton of players last year. A ton.
But this is coming after the year that they were supposed to be national champs and they got destroyed by Georgia.
And that's what I was about to say. They were supposed to be national champions. They went undefeated. But this goes back to strength of schedule. What I'm kind of ready to see is if that news that we got today is true, as Gus Malzahn was named the new offensive coordinator, or supposed to be the new offensive coordinator at FSU.
Yeah, I think it's there.
If that is the case, if Malzahn goes to FSU, do we see a different Florida State University next year, or are they going to get exposed again?
I don't think so. I mean, Gus, yes, after the national championship he run with Auburn, because everybody said he run that high school offense. We're getting way off topic, but that's fine. I think he can come and make some changes. I mean, he has not done bad at UCF and stuff like that, but I'm just, as far as I want to see what Florida's going to do. I mean, I think, they got it, like I said, they got to jump in the portal. They're going to have to do a little bit more recruiting. Now, Todd reported a couple weeks ago that Florida said that they're staying with Napier through the season. So maybe here next week, in a couple weeks, they fire him, but I don't know if the players, finally struck up and stood up for him and they started helmet to helmet, chin strap to chin strap, started playing hard for him and really getting this big win. Lagway, 14 for 22, 133 yards, 2 touchdowns, and only 1 pick. Really played stellar game for a full start. Now, you got to remember, Graham Mertz should be coming back next year off of his injury, which I think they had a lot of problems early in the year figuring out Lagway, Mertz, Lagway. But when Mertz finally, went out and Lagway took over, really got some, I guess, continuity in their team and found something late. So we're going to try to keep updated as much as we can through Florida through our off season, after bowl season where the coaching goes. But, and this was one of the games they had the silly fight at the end. I thought, planting the flag. And then I think Mike Norvell grabbed the Florida flag from one of the players or something. It was silly. No place for it. He did apologize, but it's still, you can't take back your actions like that. You can only apologize and get over them. All right, so now let me get a swig. Man, I'm getting long-winded. We'll jump into our games of the week, I believe. The first game we have on our strength was the Mississippi State Bulldogs, who are bottom of the barrel SEC team, against the Ole Miss Rebels in the Egg Bowl, which is no shocker here who won this one. Again, in this game, Cody, it was a little bit closer than I thought. Mississippi State did have some decent numbers in their total offense, which is only their passing game for Marcus Van Buren, who played really well. But they go up to Oxford and really find a buzzsaw in Ole Miss.
Well, I'm going to say this. There's no surprise that the game is close because it is one of those hard-nosed rivalry games. Yeah. Every single year you can guarantee you're going to get a good ball game out of this because these two teams hate each other. I mean, they hate each other.
Yeah, this Egg Bowl is one of them. It's just hate all around. And it's always a really good game to watch and I guess to be a part of. But, at the end, 26-14, Ole Miss takes it. Jackson Dart really played stellar, 143 yards, 1 touchdown, is the new school leader at Ole Miss, surpassing Eli Manning. I think it's 10,134 yards, something like that. 14.
He's only been there 14 seasons.
Yeah, it does feel like that. I remember him was just a baby. I think he lost his first Egg Bowl, and he made a venture to say he'll never lose another one again, and he didn't. He took the other 3 years, and this is their 3rd year in a row winning it. But on the other side, Mississippi State, 330 total offensive yards, 291 on the air, 39 on the ground game. Marcus Van Buren really played well. 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 in the air. Really kind of was the only reason they scored as far as their points. But I just, it was 14-10 after 1 quarter, so they really kept it close. But then I think, Dart really coming in, doing Jackson Dart things, really made it get to the win. And Ulysses, if I say this right,
Ulysses?
Yeah, Ulysses Bennett really was the guy. He had a 98-yard scamper, or 89 yards long, 136 yards, 1 touchdown, was really that icing on the cake that Ole Miss needed. Super electric play. He hit that A-gap, and I think the only thing they seen was elbows and bottom of his feet as he went through the end zone. So, was a little close at the beginning, but nonetheless, Ole Miss takes care of business. Not a playoff team this year, which we really had high hopes for Ware Bennett and his receiving core. I mean, what's that coach's name?
You really are put me on this. I'm just kidding. Lane Kiffin.
Lane Kiffin. I think he's done a good job. He wanted more for this team, and I think, Jackson Dart leaving. We all know Kiffin can recruit, so I think they'll have a really good bounce back year, and maybe they can jump in the playoff next year.
As long as they don't leave him in the terminal at the airport.
Well, that's happened once or twice before. But the biggest game, honestly, God, we do have a few more games that were closer and better, but to me, this was the absolute game of the week. As far as we couldn't have picked it to be, me and Todd talked about it, but to put in Auburn, Alabama, because for our show, it is the biggest game, but I think this was the biggest game of our predictions and for our show. But Georgia Tech travels down to Stanford Stadium to take on the Georgia Bulldogs in clean old-fashioned hate. And this game really showed it as one of the craziest games, one of the longest games I remember watching. I didn't watch the Texas A&M LSU when they went to 9 overtimes. Oh, she ain't listening. But no, this was a crazy game. 8 overtimes. We haven't seen that in a while. And the reason for was because of that LSU game handful of years back that made it to where we can do this. But what a game.
Oh, look, I want to ask, did you and Todd have this predicted like me, Hayden, and Brian did on HCS Media?
No, we had Georgia coming in and stomping. Or I didn't have Todd's pick,
that's what we had. We had Georgia, we had it close ball game at first, and then we had Georgia like blowing them out in the second half. There was none of this 44-42.
No, most definitely.
This right here is probably the craziest game that is going to go down in history for a while as far as rivalry.
Well, and especially for this Georgia Tech Georgia rivalry. And we got up and got moving this morning, and that morning I come in, flicked on the TV, and it was 14-0 then. They go in at the half 17-0, which is shocker. Now, we have talked before, Georgia is to pick which quarter they're going to play, and they did bring it back in the second half and do crazy things. But I'm just walking up and seeing they was already up 17-0 at half shocked me. As far as that, Haynes King for Georgia Tech was really, he scored, man, he scored 5 touchdowns, really big, 303 in the air, and then 24 carries. This kid was banged up. This kid was a fighter. 24 carries, 110 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Really done it all for Georgia Tech. And besides their defense keeping them in it, they really done what I thought they would do once this game got into the later quarters. But man, Georgia 405 yards of offense, 297 in the air, 108 on the ground, which I thought would have been a little more from Nate Frazier, but he had Beck really doing things that we've seen Beck to do. Big plays for Georgia. And I think right in the fourth quarter, when it got close to down to a minute, Dan Jackson forced the fumble that really turned the game over to give them another drive to score. Which we sat here and we just sat here and it kept going. And I was like, well, this kind of be like the Auburn Texas A&M game, and it got to like the 6th or 7th overtime. Brittany's like, I'm getting ready for bed, so I laid in here and watched it. Just a really good game. And I hate to see a quarterback like Haynes King, have a tremendous 5 touchdown game and come out with a loss. But this is what you get in one of them kind of matchups.
Well, I will tell you this. Earlier in the week when we discussed this matchup, I had Haynes King going out of this game a little bit earlier because I figured that Georgia front on that defense would have got to him just a little bit more than what they actually did. He actually performed a lot better hurt than what I gave him credit for. I will tell you, my prediction was a little bit off. I knew Georgia would end up pulling it out just because Georgia is a last-minute team. Kirby Smart has always been, one of those guys that pulls a cat out of the bag at the last second and, pulls a extravagant play out and gets a win. But Haynes King is one of those that I have to give him credit.
Most
credit is due.
Yes, most definitely.
The kid played with a whole lot of mental toughness and physical toughness, and really and truly, even though the scoreboard says they lost the game, they beat Georgia down.
They did,
in my opinion.
And I think there could be some hangover that to the SEC championship if Georgia's going to play Texas, but that's for next week. Really great game. I think this is, like you said, one for the ages, for the clean old-fashioned hate in Georgia. So, like I said, now it's up to Georgia to finish. Whew, I'm getting another drink.
This one going down to Kyle Field had no effect on the Longhorns.
No, it did not. It's kind of shocking as Texas A&M really took the overtime game. I don't think there was any hangover from that game and the loss against Auburn, but it proves to show that there might have been some. 17-7 as the Longhorns, keep that top spot in the SEC and that high spot in the playoff bracket. Marcel Reed really struggled. I think that the Texas defense got after him. He really did not play a well game. He had 16 for 23, 146 yards on 14 carries on 60 yards, and he was their leading passer and rusher. But the biggest thing, the Texas defense just fought. They made him turn the ball over 3 times. And again, we've talked about, 3+. If you're in that turnover ratio there with 3 turnovers, you usually don't win, and it come true. A lot of Texas did everything right. You were 17 for 28, 218 yards, total 428 yards, 218 on the ground from Ewers, in the air from Ewers, and then 240 on from that great Russian attack from Texas. So what did you like here about this one and how they come out?
So what I will say is Ewers is another one of those quarterbacks that's playing banged up. He's been banged up
all year. I
was going to say he's been banged up pretty much all year. But the good thing about Texas is they've got Arch Manning right behind him. This kid can come in and he can do just as good, if not a better job than Quinn Ewers to get this Texas offense going. But one thing I will say that I saw, in my opinion, is this is one of the first games all season that I think it's taken Texas a while to get in a groove.
Right.
I think it took them 2 or 3 drives to get down to get the first score.
Right. Well, then it's similar to the Oklahoma game and the Red Rivalry, whatever it was. But it took them 1 or 2 state drive to get. But once they got wheeled up, it was all Longhorn. Sarkisian really has done a good job at being focused each week going in.
And that's exactly what I was going with, Marty. I mean, once they get that first drive going, Steve Sarkisian can usually get it dialed in.
Yeah, most definitely a benefit of Saban coaching tree with Stark. Texas really defended A&M really well, causing the 3 turnover. I think they were the biggest difference in that. Texas. Quentin Weiser, the running back, 33 carries, no touchdowns on 186 yards. The first, they were struggling at first, but then Arch Manning did have that 15-yard touchdown run that made it 7-0. And when Ewers finally settled down, he come in, didn't have any touchdowns, but threw the ball really well. So not surprising this team is number 1 in the SEC by any means, and taking that win. So, I mean, horns up.
I was gonna say I had the horns up on that game earlier this week, and everybody that I talked to earlier in the week, I didn't get a chance to talk with Marty or Todd, but I will tell you, everybody that I did talk with had the horns down because of College Station and Kyle Field being one of the toughest atmospheres to play in. But I knew that if Steve Sarkisian could get dialed in with that offense and get Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning going, that Texas team was going to pull it out.
Oh, most definitely. All right, so now I guess this is the upset of the week, as in the Palmetto Bowl, South Carolina travels right across the way there to Clemson for which one was this? This is the Palmetto Bowl, Palmetto Trophy, whatever. Another in-state rival. Probably I don't say the best game South Carolina's played all year, but they really played, or I say freshman Lenore Southerners was the man this game. He couldn't do anything wrong.
So probably cleanest game he's played.
Yes, cleanest game. He had 3 rushing attempts for over 30 yards. His longest being that 38-yard touchdown that he ran near the end of the ball game that really sealed this win for them. 16 carries, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns, 13 for 21, 164, QBR rating of 92%. That's one of the highest we've seen all year for a quarterback in this game. So I think Miro had a game he was early, and Jackson Dart early on had one like a 98. And he threw 1 pick, but with these yards like this, it was crazy. Now, I had predicted in our pre-show that Clemson could come in and really take care of them, depending on South Carolina's defense, and Cade Klubnik to really do his thing. But he didn't. He only had 2 rushes for 62 yards on 2 touchdowns. Was their only offense that they could put together from this really stout South Carolina defense.
And I'd said earlier in the week too, Marty, that it depended on what Clemson team you got. I said Dabo Swinney is an old style coach. He does not like the transfer portal. He's not big on the NIL. This team is running on what I would call fumes.
Yeah, I think Dabo's running on fumes at Clemson.
Yeah, I think he is too. I think he is too. And so, with that, he doesn't really have big players that are key players to really play these big time games. They just barely squeak by. Now they did play a good game against Pitt the week before. Now, going back to South Carolina, I told y'all last time I was on y'all's show that South Carolina was a team to watch.
Oh, most definitely.
I told y'all that Lenore Sellers and I believe it's Rocket Sanders is right behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Those two players on their feet are going to be dangerous. And if you watched, Lenore did get out of the pocket a couple of times, and he took off.
It was, and juking, jiving, flipping, and flopping. He was really like he was playing in Madden or College 25. That the way he ran and was juking, making cuts to get into the end zone was really the biggest factor in this game. Yes, they played a team game, but freshman Lenore Sellers really did the test of time in this game and really can excel being this South Carolina quarterback.
I think here what you're seeing is the start of a slight rise for South Carolina here.
And I think so as well. That was what we talked. Yeah, the Shane Beamer era here is what we looked to earlier. I think it is kind of a little shocking that they're that high in the playoff or in the AP at 15. Really, they did struggle a bit early, but they really put it on. Kind of a little shocking, but I like it. I love defense. Debo Williams has been one of my guys I've had picked since the beginning of the year. But, they get the big win in Clemson. Help their strike. Going to finish strong, go into a bowl. So I really think this South Carolina, like you said, has got a lot to look forward in the future with Beamer Ball.
I agree 100%. That was probably another great matchup.
Oh, most definitely. Now for our game of the week. Didn't come out how we wanted it to, or for me anyway. Being the Auburn fan I am, but the Auburn Tigers travel down to Tuscaloosa for the, I don't remember, 115th or 94th something rivalry matchup in the Iron Bowl. Let's take a look at it. I mean, for me, honest to God, Auburn fan wise, I really thought this game would have been more Alabama. I thought they really could have put up 40 in some spots. They had the big touchdown pass that Hollywood 17-year-old Ryan Williams dropped.
Had another one that CJ Dupree dropped. And let me tell you, and Marty, I don't mean to cut you off, but watching this game, it wasn't really drops that they should have caught. I believe that Auburn's defense was there to make the breakups. The trip up on Hollywood, and then CJ Dupree trying to catch that ball one-handed to wrap it around to clinch it, and the defender getting a hand on it.
Yeah,
as he comes down. I mean, that defense was stellar in the first half.
I most definitely have talked really well about Auburn's defense. The thing about Auburn's defense, they're super young. Jay Crawford, I think Kendrick Fox, a little bit young on that line, but he really played. He played in the backfield all night. They do have some growing pains in the back seven, but I think that's a good thing for Auburn coming in. I really thought Bama's defense killed Auburn's momentum, which we've said all year as far as Hugh Freeze to run the ball, give Jacquez the ball. He didn't. I think he maybe had 98 yards, 15 carries. And I think it was only 2 rushers. It was him and Peyton. Nobody else got the ball out of the backfield. Unless it was a reverse or a hitch or something like that really made a whole lot. Auburn, Peyton Thorpe played how we'd figure Peyton Thorpe would play. 21 for 41, 301 yards, 1 touchdown to Cam Coleman. Third quarter is already late. That was not Peyton Thorne's best game by any means. I just thought it was a few decisions coachingly, I guess, that Auburn should have ran the ball. But on the other side of that, Alabama's defense really killed Auburn's momentum once big stops. The goal line stop that they had, a few things that Alabama's defensive backs played really well. I thought the trenches, too, were a big thing because Auburn couldn't get going in the running game because of Alabama's defensive line.
Well, that front seven, in my opinion, has had its times where it's been dangerous. I'll be honest with you. At the beginning of the season, I was not a fan of this 4-2-5 swarm defense that they were playing with. But late in the season, once they started figuring it out, they started coming out and they were playing hard, and they were starting to show something. Yeah. The only thing that I will say that concerned me going into this game was losing Deontay Lawson at that linebacker position. I felt like that was going to hurt us, depending on who they put in there. But I can't remember who they
Russo?
put. I was going to say, I think it might have been Russo that they put in that position. But the ones that I was focused on was, Malachi Moore, even though his attitude has been very off this season, and I do not agree with it, played a stellar game.
He most definitely did.
He had that one hit on Jarquez Hunter to break up a big pass.
Backfield where Auburn really needed the first down in red zone territory. The pass was a pretty pass, and he leveled him, dropped the ball. Really thought it was one of the really good defensive. And we both know Malachi Moore is a great talent, can play in the NFL. But I think for people out there, GM-wise, look at his attitude, especially his actions in games before the Vandy game and stuff like that. That may be a concern. But back to the game. I mean, Auburn, 399 total offensive yards, 301 in the air from Peyton Thorne. But it's a shocker again that we're looking at this stat. Auburn only had 98 rushing yards, which stinks for Jarquez Hunter because he was an Auburn man. He'd been at Auburn and he run hard, and there was a couple goal line plays that we should have given, or I think they should have made the call to give him. But at the end of the day, Alabama was just too much. Jalen Milroe really was the biggest spark Alabama had offensively. 18 for 24, 256, one pick. Not a bad day at the office. But then you flip it over to him on the legs. 17 carries, 104 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Total 360 yards total offense from your quarterback, which is what you need in a rivalry game. And it shows as the Crimson Tide gets their 5th win in a row, 28-14 in the Iron Bowl.
And right now you're looking at if Alabama either goes to a bowl game or
the
playoff, he has a chance to tie Tim Tebow and Johnny Manziel and
now see
rushing touchdowns. Which that was regular season.
Right. Now he passed, I think he tied with Cam Newton
at 20.
And he didn't. That's what me and Brittany were talking about during the game. So I think Johnny Football Money's next, and then Tebow, which stellar players, all Heisman players. So not a bad day. If you're an Auburn fan, yes, of course it was a bad day, but nonetheless, hopefully next year's getting better. Already seeing rumors of the transfer, Micah Riley in the transfer portal, some on Hank Brown, but that's still picky. Garner I think he's already in the transfer portal, but nonetheless, another Iron Bowl in the books. Nobody died. Everybody's still alive. Maybe a little upset about it, but it happens. Oh man, I'm hitting the wrong buttons. Nothing new. Let me jump back to this and see where we're at because I don't remember. All right. Well, guys, really that's the main part of the show as far as football-wise that we have. Again, shout out to our buddies Nick and Hunter at the Dad Pod, HCS Media, Hayden Coker, and all the stuff he does. Brandon, Judd, doing everything that you do. Hadn't got to talk to y'all much this week. Before we get out of here, though, we still got to cover a few things. I think tomorrow or tonight that we ended the poll for the best college mascot tournament, which this week was Alabama. Let's see if I can pull these up. Let's take a quick review of which ones we had on there. Hit the buttons. These were your 5 choices here. I wish I had the dates on them. I don't. But after, I think Todd said a 55% win percentage on this one. Let's get the drum roll. Do it again. And your winner is this. I think it was. I don't want to get 87 to 92 era.
I want to say that was your era that Gene Stallings.
Yes, it was a song. This was my favorite. This is the retro logo that you, the fans, chose. So it will get the place for Alabama's logo once we fully start the logo tournament. Now, alphabetically wise, we're going to jump to our next team and get the next team going, which they've had so many over the years. I think in 1970 they had 3 different logos, which is crazy. I know me and Brittany looked at them for 30, 45 minutes the other day saying, wow, how crazy that is. But our next team is the Arkansas Razorbacks. Let's flip over and take a look at these. If you're watching on our YouTube, you can see them. People on Spotify, jump over, check them out. We will have some polls during the week to get this going. But Cody, look at how crazy some of these are as far as, yeah, you do get the pig in all of them, which is their main call. But I mean, retro wise, I do like that 1950. It's not the vicious pig you see all the time, but there were so many more crazy ones that you wouldn't believe.
And I'll say, I do like the 1950 ones. It looks kind of like a sleeping hog. Right now, they've been kind of sleeping all year.
Yeah, for the most part.
But number 5 is actually pretty cool, too.
That's mostly, so somewhat 8 is their current logo. It does. But look how crazy that, like I said, they had 3 in the 70s, number 3, 4, and 5. Hopefully you can flip over and look and see it on our YouTube. Like I said, we will have polls, but that second one in the 1970s really looked like he got into some
he'd been in the cheese.
Yeah, ate some of that corn that they'd been fermenting. And the see them have an actual black logo in the 70s was kind of crazy, but it's still the same running pig. I do like some of these retro wise, but then the current is still probably a favorite. All right, guys, so they do have a few more choices here at Arkansas, so this is going to be a week-to-week poll. Once we get them in, get everything you need as far as the 3 platforms, YouTube, not Snapchat. What's the other ones?
You got YouTube, Facebook, and I don't know if you can vote on Spotify, but I know you're on Spotify.
I think I don't know. That's more of a Todd question than a Marty question.
Todd, if you see this, I'm sorry if I screwed it up.
Nah. Could have been worse. All right, let's see. So, that's pretty much the end of the show. I did already do all my shout-outs again for Chuck's Heating and Air, all our sponsors, friends. Again, Cody, thanks for coming on for another show. Let me make sure I press all these buttons right. I know it's dinner time. And I can't reach the computers. That's still not right. Can I not spell? Yeah, I know.
I was going to say, you might want to click it.
Yeah, I might want to click it before. You would think we would get some of this done 14, 15 weeks in the season. But no, again, guys, thanks. Jump on our other platforms, hear from us. Do what you need to do. I talked to Todd today. I sold another hat. So we still got our merch up. If you're looking to sponsor some of the Under Review podcasts, some of the content we do, please reach out to us. We got a few different plans if you're wanting to go that route. But again, remember, we love you. God loves you.
Thanks for making the call to go under review. Join us next time as we go to the monitors. Until then, keep your flag handy.